Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Kevin Lewis from the Middle Initial Podcast, coming to you with another position preview for the fantasy football season. Uh, for those of you who want to win or who want information, who have been slacking and just feel like and are cramming in preparation for draft season, which is basically now more or less like a lot of drafts are going to start happening within the next week or so. So for those of you, I am here for you. I'm putting out four parts. It's a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end preview. I recorded the other three. This is the final one. Unless people want more. If you want more, you have suggestions. Feel free at me. My at DM, smoke signal, whatever it is, Discord, whatever it is, to contact me. Sure, and also for those who listen, and you don't even feel like listening to me go on and on, but not on and on. I've kept them relatively short. But if you like just the written version better, I'm offering draft guides for those of you who would like that. I'll write it up. You give me your league settings. I write it up. We could talk about it more. We could do whatever you want after that. But you give me your league settings. I write a plan for you and give it and send it to you by email. So if you want to do that, if that's something you're interested in, please just let me know. So as far as this position, I'm doing tight ends. There's not a lot to say here because I feel like first of all, I know we do this every year where we claim tight end is deeper than it is. As far as how many actual good players there are at tight end, and we feel like this is the year is going to be 8, 9, 10 good options, and you don't have to like there isn't a big difference between because in past years it's usually been like all right, Kelsey is just creme de la creme, and like there's somebody like near enough to him but not as good like Mark Andrews or whoever, and then it's just largely it doesn't matter that much after that who you have if you don't have one of them. Now I kind of feel like you're looking at 7, 8, 9, 10 like potentially good options, and that's not even including T.J. Hawkinson, who that's not for. I understand it freely. That's not for everybody. To take that kind of risk with a guy who might miss 5, 6, 7 weeks and who's coming off a torn ACL. I understand that might not be for everybody, but also you're not getting that kind of upside anywhere else at tight end. Accounting for cost. So I think there's a bunch of them. This might not be. This is not going to be as in depth or as informative as the other spots. To be quite honest with you, but because I don't think as long as you walk away with one of the top like 12, 12 is probably too much, 8 or 9 tight ends. I don't think it matters that much who you take. If you want to discuss value, like I think David Njoku is probably like it's up there as far as value goes. Like he was, I want to say he was like tight end 3 for the last like 8 weeks of last year, and I understand the skepticism because he did it with Joe Flacco instead of Nasty Man, but I'm not so sure that Nasty Man can't just dump the ball to him like they had Joe Flacco doing. I, I know he stinks and he has stunk, but I I don't think his floor ceiling is affected that much going from Flacco to Deshaun, to Nasty Man. I'm not sure of that. So that and he's in his cost kind of reflects the fact that nobody believes in Deshaun, understandably. But you don't have to pay much for a guy who clearly showed you he has top 3 upside at the position, even if it was not for a full season and it was for a half a season. Jake Ferguson is another one. Dallas is gonna throw the ball a lot. They don't have any running backs worth a damn really. Down the stretch of last year, he was really good. They didn't add any receivers. I think wheels up for jail. Jake Ferguson, as I think he could be one of those guys who you look up this time next year, and we're talking about he had a TE4 finish. Aside from that, it's like if you want to take Travis Kelsey, go for it. I do think there's a world where we might be undervaluing him just a tad, but it depends on how many touchdowns he scores. Like he was tight end 1 last year, even though he was slightly disappointing based on the fact he was going in like round 1. and he only scored 5 touchdowns. So if the Chiefs offense is better and he scores 8 or 9 touchdowns, we might be having a different conversation about Travis Kelce, his 24 season as opposed to his 23 season. So I mean, Kelce, he should be tight end one. For the first time basically ever, I'm not really into drafting him because I just don't. In round 2 where he's going, I don't think that makes a lot of sense given again the nature of the position, and I don't think he has differentiating upside anymore because I don't think the Chiefs are going to play him enough or target him enough for him to realize that. Sam Laporta, I don't know if he's scoring 10 touchdowns again, but he's like the Lions kind of use him like he's an oversized wide receiver in the first place. You know, they play a bunch of games. They play. I don't think they play an outdoor game until like December. Really good offense. I don't think their defense is going to be any good either. So they're gonna have. They are ripe for shootouts every week. So Sam Laporta, draft him. I love Trey McBride personally. Like I think he as far stylistically, I think he's like Diet Gronk. Like not as big, not as physically gifted. I'm not saying he's Gronkowski. He reminds me of him a little bit, a lesser version of him. So I love him personally. I think he's one of the guys. There's 6-7 guys who have TE1 type of potential. I think he's one of them. Mark Andrews is so reliable. Lamar's going to throw him the ball. He's going to score points. You want to draft him? Draft him. You should draft him. He's a very draftable player. You're happy to have Mark Andrews on your fantasy team, even if you're not necessarily excited to draft Mark Andrews. Kyle Pitts is one who his ADP being in round 6 doesn't make any sense because his ADP last year was in round 6, and that was with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. So he got a significant quarterback upgrade, potentially at least, significant play caller upgrade, offensive support staff upgrade, and his ADP didn't go anywhere. I understand people are tired of Kyle Pitts. I think that's a little bit weird because we could all look at his last. First of all, he plays tight end, so if he's just regular good instead of great, or even like above average, you're not losing that much by taking the chance on him in the first place. And if he goes crazy, you know, he has, you know, tight end 1 unicorn level kind of potential, even if it might not be likely he gets there because you still have to fight with Bijan for touches, Drake Leonard for touches, and modern medicine is what it is, but Kirk Cousins is fucking 36 coming off a torn Achilles. So, I mean, I like him. I plan to be very overweight on Kyle Pitts in fantasy this year because he's a 6'6", 250-pound man that moves like that and is getting arguably the largest quarterback upgrade from year to year in the league this year. So I'm willing to take him. I'm going to take him. And if you have the appetite for it, I strongly suggest that you do the same. George Kittle, I think George Kittle's basically a tier 1 tight end if Brandon Ayuk gets traded. I don't think Ayuk is going to get traded. I think if he was going to get traded to me, he would have got traded already. This is being recorded on August 14th. If Brandon Ayuk was going to be traded, he should have been traded already. Like I think San Francisco is working to get something done. And largely, I think this works I think this is basically a restricted free agent situation without the guy actually being a restricted free agent. Like, he shopped himself around. He got some offers. Like, he said no to some teams. The Steelers seem to be one of the yeses. They have a number on paper for him, apparently. So the Niners are like, okay, well, what about this number? What about that? I think it ends with him there. But George Kittle is really good anyway, but if Ayuk gets traded, which I think is unlikely, Kittle definitely goes up a tier. Either way, with George Kittle, you just have to keep in mind, he's kind of game plan dependent. He's week to week dependent. He's volatile, which to me is more than fine from that position. If you get 4 points from George Kittle, you chalk that up to the game and you're done with it. Now, granted, I have the stomach for volatility more than most, but when you get to the playoffs and George Kittle gets you 35 points and he advances you a week, you're not going to give a fuck about what he did in week 4 when he gave you 5. He can ruin the other person's your opponent's week. I like players who can ruin the opposing team's week. So George Kittle one of the tight ends you should draft. Dalton Kincaid, he has weird splits. Well, not weird splits, but when Dawson Knox was on the field last year, he was considerably less productive, considerably less, ran considerably less routes, considerably less targets on down the list. I mean, the Bills' wide receiver room is kind of barren. I think it's kind of the land of misfit toys until proven otherwise. Kincaid is probably the most talented guy in that receiver room or offensive player room, however you want to put it. And you're tethering yourself to one of the league's very best quarterbacks. I think Dalton Kincaid's case is really simple. You're betting on the talent and you're betting on the surroundings. Draft Dalton Kincaid. Evan Ingram, I think, is kind of a trap. He's fine to draft. I'm not telling you not to draft Evan Ingram. His numbers without Christian Kirk as opposed to with them are such a stark difference that I think you should proceed with relative caution. Obviously, if you just want a high floor guy, you press the button. You press the button. You put him in your lineup. You don't worry about it. If you want a little bit more, you want a guy who could be in the top 5 discussion at the position, top 4, whatever it is. I don't think Evan Ingram is your man, so I think I'd proceed with caution with regard to. And they traded for. They signed Gabe Davis in free agency, and they drafted another wide receiver in the first round. So he has more competition for targets in theory anyway. So I wouldn't be drafting him if I'm looking for a ceiling play. If you're looking for a boring floor play, Evan Ingram is your man. Dallas Goedert, I feel like we could copy and paste everything we said about Evan Ingram without the moving parts and the adding receivers and the Christian Kirk. You want a boring floor play? Dallas Goedert is for you, and you don't have to pay much for it. I think you could do better. I think you should probably aim higher. But if for some reason, let's say you play the market too conservatively and you're looking up, it's like, oh man, these tight ends kind of stink, and Goddard's still on the board, you could take him. I would not go into it looking to draft Dallas Goedert. That's not what I would do personally, but it's not exactly the worst thing in the world to have him. If he's tight end 10, whatever, you deal with it and you move. That's it. TJ Hockenson, I touched on him earlier. I'll say it again. Given how cheap he is currently right now, there's nobody that presents that kind of upside, even if obviously you have to build in the downside, even though, I mean, you really don't have to build in the downside because A, you don't have to draft him as a starter, for one. B, if you have an IR spot, you just put him in the IR spot, you move on. And C, you could draft all kinds of usable tight ends that can get you by until TJ Hockenson comes back. So I say draft TJ Hockenson. There are injury discounts that I strongly suggest you take, and he is one of them. Jonathan Brooks is the other. Rashee Rice is a suspension discount, but potential suspension discount because people are still scared about that. Take him too. So ultimately, I think those tight ends add Pat Freiermuth. I think Freiermuth works better if you're going to pair him with T.J. Hockenson, for example. Even Tyler Conklin works better if you're going to pair him with T.J. Hockenson. But for the most part, if you land one of the top 10 tight ends, you should be fine. And there are a bunch of them who have, elite tier difference making kind of upside. Even if I'm not sure there's a large difference as of today, how they're projected between the top 6 or 7 guys. I don't think there's a big difference. So, all right, well, that's the tight end preview. So I've done quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. They will release shortly. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit the podcast account, MIPod69. Hit me, KLEW24. Smoke signal. I mean, you heard all the ways of communication mentioned before. Do that. Again, I'm offering guides, if you plans, outlines for plans, whatever you want to call them. If you have a draft and you want somebody to guide you through it, give me your league settings. Contact me. Give me your league settings. I will write up something for you if that's what you want. Anywho, happy drafting, and I will see you when I see you.